Hey, welcome back to the Abundant OD series, where we highlight successful optometrists who are working to make a positive difference in the world, contribute to the greater good. In our episodes, we're getting to know the people behind the title, what makes them tick, and what mission they're working to serve. So today, I am very excited to have Dr. Mick Kling, who's oh man, he does a lot of things, so get ready. He's the founder and CEO of Impact Leadership, which provides leadership and culture and business consulting for the eye care community. He's also the founder and CEO of Invision Optometry, which is one of the largest single location optometric practices in San Diego. And he's also a practice management and transition advisor for Vision Source. So Mick, thanks for taking time out of that hectic schedule to come talk to us today.
Eric, thank you so much for having me. Always look forward to the conversation with you.
Yeah, you bet. So yeah, let's get into it then. Tell us a little bit about, every time I talk to you, we've known each other now for, I don't know, maybe 5 or so years, I think. And you're always, the thing that comes across for sure, and I'm sure anybody who has a conversation with you will tell you the same, is that, or say the same thing, is that you just have this passion for optometry, and specifically the independent optometrists just comes out. You just exude it wherever you go, whatever conversation you have, for hearing you speak or just in private conversation. Tell us why optometry, like how'd you get into this profession, and what is that like? What was a driving motivator for you to be such a champion for independent optometrists?
Yeah, so I get asked this question occasionally, and I kind of struggle with the answer because it wasn't a singular thing. I remember there were two pivotal things in my life that were occurring back in the 80s when I was in college, and one was just trying to figure out what I wanted to be and what I wanted my career path to be. And we had a family friend that was an optometrist that was a really big positive influence on me, and so that was a big part of it. And then I was working as an EMT in the emergency room of the hospital of the college I was in Arkansas, where I grew up. And I just noticed that a lot of the physicians were very unhappy. And I met this young new orthopedic surgeon who had just finished his residency, and he said, my dad was an optometrist, and if I were to have it all to do over again, I would have gone to optometry school. I'm like, really? Okay. So that's sort of, those two things kind of pointed me in that direction, and then just got into the profession and got through my education, and really fell in love with the profession. Quickly, I realized that I enjoyed the business part of the profession more than actually the patient care part. And so I think that's where the passion comes from for teaching and educating other ODs about business finance and practice management topics. That peer-to-peer interaction was really fun and engaging for me. Not that I mind seeing patients so much, but I would really, honestly, much rather work with colleagues.
Sure. So as you say, that's that feeding into, like, I usually ask, what's the bigger reason why you do what you do? And especially like helping, because I know you do, like you said, a lot of work with your colleagues, independent optometrists across the country in various aspects or modalities, with practice management, financial management, and a lot of things, a lot of other things. What has got you so excited about the independent optometry community?
Well, this is a very biased answer, but I personally believe that independent optometry really is the best place to deliver the best care. And I say that very carefully because I understand that we have colleagues that are in all kinds of practice modalities, and we need all those modalities. But when I think of from a personal satisfaction level as a business owner, there is just nothing more satisfying than be able to own your own business, provide jobs for your community, provide care in a way that you see best fit for your community and your patient base, and also just get the financial rewards and that ownership premium of being an investor in a business that then has later some value that you could potentially sell it down the road. So the concept of owning your own practice is just something that's always been exciting to me. Again, completely understanding it's not for everybody. That's okay. That's fine if you choose an employed doctor route. But for those that do want to take this journey, really what I'm passionate about is really supporting them. Because Eric, and when I was in optometry school, we got no business acumen training whatsoever, and so it's a huge knowledge gap. And so being able to help educate independent business owners about really even basic business acumen topics is just exciting for me, and it's just a very rewarding thing to give back to the profession.
Yeah, for sure. So here's a question I don't think I've ever really asked you. So I'm generally curious. How did did you have some specific mentors or a course you found, or how did you get your business acumen training? Because, I've heard you speak multiple times, and I know what you're talking about, your stuff, but like you said, there's no official training through optometry school, really. And where did you kind of build that skill?
Yeah, yes, to answer your question, I did have some very good business minded mentors. These were all optometrists that also had a very heavy bent toward really understanding how businesses work. One was an ophthalmologist that was really my first job out of my residency that I worked for. He and I became really good friends, and to this day are still very good friends. And he was an amazing mentor to me. And then a couple of other optometry mentors that were really instrumental. In that, with reading lots of books and just sort of self-educating and trying to absorb all the information and knowledge that I could get, was really beneficial. But the thing about it is that, we don't have to be financial experts. We don't need to have finance degrees to know how to run a business. We just need some basic business acumen. So it didn't take anything more than just me being diligent and, trying to spend as much time learning as I possibly could. So I would say just being open-minded about all different sources of obtaining knowledge. Anywhere I could get it, I was just a sponge to absorb it.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. And I think it was that same kind of approach that actually fueled our first interaction ever together, right? Do you want to tell people about that? Or
yeah, in fact, I just told this story again yesterday. I've told this story many times. For those listening, some of you that have seen me speak before maybe have seen me speak on a topic called Profit First, which is an amazing cash flow management strategy. In the optometry community, I get a lot of credit for that course, but what a lot of people don't know is that you are the one responsible for me learning that technique. And I told this story yesterday. I was at Vision Expo in New York, and I just told this story again yesterday, how you came to one of my courses, introduced yourself. A couple weeks later, this book shows up in my mailbox with a little note from you in the front that said, "Hey, listen, I think you might enjoy this book." And I tell you, Eric, I've told you this before, I literally about fell out of my chair when I read that book. And I still, to this day, get a little bit emotional thinking about it because it came at just the right time for me personally. I had just moved into an 8,000 square foot building. We just done $1 million remodel. I was laying in bed thinking, how am I going to do this? And it just came at the right time. Also, I was doing some consulting at the time, and I was pretty good at identifying what was wrong with a practice, but I didn't really have a solution, anything to give them to help fix the problem. And so after reading the book and getting involved, and of course, you and I engaged more after that for sure, and then getting my certification like you are already certified as a Profit First professional, just really opened my eyes to the potential of being able to teach this methodology. And so now over the last 5 years or so, like you, have had the privilege to be able to teach this strategy to many, many people all across the country. And in fact, you and I have done some stuff together even, which is always fun. So I've always been very grateful for just you introducing me to the topic, and here we are 5 years later, and still doing great with it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That was um yeah, I mean that was great experience for me as well. Like you were one of the first people that like consultants, speakers that I found in the optometry community that really latched on to what I was talking about, got it right away, and just and took it and ran with it, right? Because
Yeah.
give me all and appreciate the credit for the introduction, but it's your execution into the optometry community that has been just stellar, bringing that to everybody. And then, of course, whether people seek me out or somebody else, and they have that kind of that knowledge on how to manage cash flows. There's really, there's really nothing out there, even in like accounting school. Like I have a 4-year degree plus a master's plus I'm a CPA, right? There's no real training on like small business cash flow management outside of poring over a spreadsheet for 13 weeks,
Right.
which in different cases may or and some may not be needed. But at the same time, there's really just never outside of that and cash flow statements, which I taught for a while, college level courses for 4-year accounting degrees too. And I tell you, cash flow statements confuse people learning it just as much as they confuse
Yeah.
business owners trying to like decipher it. And it's like, yeah, if you don't know the ins and outs of what's going into it, how are you ever going to know how to tell somebody what that's telling you, right? The story that it's telling you about the practice. So having something in real time like that has just been tremendous.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to know your experience with this, but one of the things that I've learned when I teach Profit First is that, and I say this every time in the audience, I say, listen, for 10% of you in this room, this is going to be an absolute game changer. You will never run your business the same. This will probably change every aspect of your life because our business finances are tied to every other aspect of our life, our personal life, our marriages, our relationships with other people. So for 10% of you, this is going to be an absolute game changer. For 10% of you, you're going to think it's too complicated, unnecessary, doesn't make any sense, a waste of time. And then about 80% of you are going to be intrigued and you're going to go home and you're going to do nothing different. Right? But it's that 10% that we get to that I walk away every time I present. I walk away. If I change the lives of 2 or 3 people in that room, it is worth every minute of my time. So it's one of those things where it's structure, it's framework, it's human behavior based, it's not dry accounting topics.
Mm-hmm.
And that so resonates with just the right people that need it at just the right time, which is why I think I executed because it hit me at just the right time that I needed it. And it provided that structure because, yeah, I can look at a statement of cash flows and honestly, it makes no sense to me. It serves no function in my practice to help me run my business better,
Mm-hmm.
but I can sit and execute on Profit First and it makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd say I get similar similar results or similar feedback that I show it to a lot of people, and that 10-80-10 kind of split you're talking about seems to, because I will get people that are like, man, this seems like too much work, or you get people who have some underlying issues in their practice, right? And they try to put Profit First into place, and then but they don't fix the underlying issues, maybe because they don't know what they are, they don't know how, and it gets too convoluted and stressful for them, and they go back to their old way, which wasn't serving them either. But at least they didn't feel lost. They just felt like something was something was still not working right, but they bounce out of it fairly quickly. And we run into people all the time who have implemented some facet of it without even without even knowing that there's this whole system in a book and program behind it, right?
Yeah, I encounter that as well. It's remarkable how many people will sit there and I can see the light bulb go off. It's like, oh, I do this kind of in a different way. So it's like for a lot of people, they sort of already have the concept, but they don't have the real formal methodology that McAllowitz does such a good job of framing in the book of like when to make your allocations and how much to make and how much can your business afford and all that kind of stuff. So what I love about it is that the idea resonates with so many people, and a lot of people are already doing it to some degree. Sometimes people will say, oh, I do that with my personal accounts. I do that at home.
Yeah.
I never thought to do it with my business. So
Yeah.
just sort of opening their mind to, hey, listen, there's another way to do it is so rewarding.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, and yeah, I get, like I said, get the same, run into the same things. And last thing, and then we can move on because I know we got some other stuff that we can talk about. But the other thing I tell everybody is that, you know, you go read the book. The book is a framework, right? Like, so one thing that I always tell them is I've been doing implementations of Profit First since like 2014 or 2015, somewhere in there. And well, 2014 is when I put it in for my practice. So I have been doing implementation since then. And I always tell them, like, look, I have not yet had a single person, at least under guidance with me, implement the system kind of by the book, like exactly the way it says, right? Because there are a lot of steps in there, and some of those steps serve every, different people differently, and some don't, right? So it's like anything else. It's finding the system that works for you, that aligns with your behaviors that you have going already, and that you can truly leverage it that way, right?
Well, and that's one thing that I love about the system because it's really it's a concept, and what's great about it is you can completely customize or modify the concept to any way that needs to be managed in your own business. I have some practices that I work with that have, the book talks about 5 foundational accounts, but have 10 or 12 accounts. They have emergency funds and they have equipment purchase accounts and they have, I have one practice that loves to have a pool of money available to support their employees if their employee needs something. Just as a sort of a charity account to help support the culture of their business. What a great way to run your business and a simple way to allocate funds to be able to afford to do that. So I love the flexibility of the program.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, listen, Eric, for people that are listening and have no idea what we're talking about, I guess we just got to make sure they go read Profit First.
There you go. Grab the book, and you'll know real quick what we're talking about there. So yeah, it's a great system. And hot tip, if you have a good sense of humor, which I'm sure most of you do, I love the audiobook because I love Mike's sense of humor and the little things he interjects into it, the author. So he does his own audiobooks and they're great. But so look, back to, I know we were talking a little bit beforehand too, because you actually were saying you spend most of your time these days working in the transition advisor role for Vision Source, and maybe some interesting talk about private equity versus independent or private sales, and anything to add into that would be helpful or
yeah, just so I'm really enjoying this part of my career right now. So for those that don't know, Vision Source is a organization of about 3,100 independently owned private practices. So Vision Source as a company doesn't own practices. All of our practices in our network are all independently owned, and Vision Source as the parent company of this organization provides resources and a community for these practices. At any given time, about 1 to 2% of our members are transitioning either into or out of ownership. And so for many ODs, buying a practice or selling a practice is often a once in a lifetime event. So a senior doctor that's wishing to sell really sells a practice one time. And so they're not very knowledgeable about how the process happens. not sure how valuations are done, not sure how to market their practice and get it ready to be sold. And then on the buyer side, many young optometrists that are just out of school that want to buy practices aren't sure how to do it, how the process works. So my job is just to really facilitate that transition. I'm not a broker. I'm not a practice appraiser. I act to facilitate the transition process, and just been having a ball doing it. Learning a lot, working a lot with banks, working a lot with attorneys, and working some with accountants even in the transition process. So that's just been a really super fun experience.
Awesome. So when you think back to, any of the several things that you do, because we always like to bring up a little bit about, some challenges you run into over the course of your career, whether it's with, your practice, or as a consultant with Vision Source, or even with Impact Leadership, or any other stage. We can always learn, from people's challenges and how they've overcome them as well. So what do you suppose has been like one of the toughest challenges in bringing any of your ideas into reality, into the marketplace?
Yeah, I think that there are two challenges that optometrists typically encounter. One is staffing issues, culture issues, which really, Eric, come down a lot of times to leadership issues. A lot of times, business owners that have staff and culture problems really have a leadership problem. And that's a very sensitive conversation to have with a business owner, because it really forces you to look inward and say, what am I as the leader of this organization contributing, either positively or negatively, to the culture of my practice? So that's a big one. And number two is finance issues, and mostly cash flow issues. Because we have the misfortune of being in a profession where we deliver care first and get paid second, that creates a timing problem, as you know. So that timing issue and that timing challenge is what gets us into cash flow problems. So helping business owners learn to manage the cash flow, and then dealing with the culture issues and the staffing issues, I think are the two biggest challenges that I see. And so when I get calls from our members, it's usually one of those two issues. Sometimes the calls will be opportunity calls, which mean, hey, I've got this opportunity to buy another practice, or I want to start a practice cold, or I've got this opportunity to be a business partner. And so in those cases, what I generally do, and this is just something personally that I've learned, is that sometimes doors are wide open and can be walked through. Sometimes doors need to be pushed a little to get through. And sometimes you push on a door and it doesn't open. And learning the discretion of when to push harder on the door is really important, and takes a lifetime to learn, because you don't want to slam open doors that are meant to be shut, but you also don't want to let a door that's kind of stuck not be pushed a little, because there could be opportunity on the other side.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So
it makes a ton of sense. And I agree with you that I think it does take a long time for a lot of folks to learn that piece. I mean, it's a rare person who kind of has that skill set at an early age, right?
Well, I think you learn those in the hard knocks of life and business ownership. You learn those experiences as you go, and that's normal. And so for us, as sort of in later part of our career, to be able to transfer that advice and wisdom and support to those behind us, I think is really important. And that's what I'm so grateful for. I had mentors that helped me understand opportunities and when to push harder and when to recognize that the door is not going to open or shouldn't be opened. I shouldn't kick the door down. And that I really enjoy being able to pass that on to others.
Awesome. So so in wrapping all this up, I usually ask at the end, but maybe you've already hit on it, but if you have something different, that's fine too. What would you say is a piece of advice you to give to others on their journey of practice ownership, whether they've been in it for a while or looking to get into it, or do you have, and like I said, maybe that was a great that was a great one. We've heard a lot of things about having mentors and learning some of the skill sets, but anything else to kind of take us home?
Yeah, I already gave you all my good stuff. So,
Yeah, it
yeah.
was great stuff. Yeah.
You know what popped in my mind just now? So when I was in New York yesterday for Vision Expo, I spent some time. They had an area of, it was called the Career Zone, and it was for new students, optometry students, and new graduates. And there were different employers up there, on the commercial side, and we were up there as Vision Source representing independent practice. And one of the conversations that I found myself having over and over again with that younger generation, is that, a first year optometry student almost always wants to go into private practice. By the time they get to their fourth year, they just want to find a job. And so somewhere in that education journey, they lose the vision and their dream gets put on the back burner. And so it reminded me to remind them that, your vision needs to stay there and needs to be really clarified. And having a vision is very important. So taking the time to stop and think about, what is it that I'm really trying to accomplish here? Where do I want to be in 10 years and 15 years? Getting that mental picture in your head, taking the time to write it down, even sharing that with people that are close to you are very critical and important in solidifying it so that you can someday achieve that. But it's just a real shame to see these optometry students have a vision and a plan for their life and get sidetracked because they're buried in student loan debt, or they're nervous about opening a practice or buying a practice. So it just reminded me to just continue preaching the message of create that vision and stick to it. And that's an important part of achieving your goals.
For sure. That's as great as any other piece of advice you've given on this. So thank you so much, Mick. I really appreciate your time. And man, this was a powerful 20 minutes or so. So
Eric, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much.
you bet. Take care.